welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. My name is Jeff Waldman, your host, and this is a podcast of all things HR, talent, HR tech, and then on basically everything else that is in the world of work. And so we've been doing this podcast for a while now. They live on our website, goscalehr.com, also on our YouTube channel as well, so don't forget to smash that subscribe button, but also like, share your comment. Obviously we want to hear from you. And this is going to be a good one. So this topic, before I bring in our guest, it's called Complicated to Clear, Building Buy-in for Your Compensation Strategy. So obviously comp has been a huge topic during the past, few years with the pandemic. And, I think just you want to share just a couple of points. And for those of you, that actually know me, know that I've had a lot of commentary about, financial pressure, over the years. And I think more so in Canada, but we are dealing with a lot of pressures right now financially. I think for the first time in decades, HR is actually grappling with this thing called inflation, like interest rate hikes and all of that kind of stuff. It's been at rock bottom for years. And so, cost of living, obviously in Canada has soared in the last probably 5 to about 7 years. And I think for the first time in ever, really, Gen Y, Gen X's, and Gen Z are actually starting to really feel the pinch. And I think that's a bit of an understatement nowadays. And so, the other thing too, I just wanted to mention with the economic stuff is our workforces are global now. They've been global for a long time, but I think now with the explosion of technology, well, a lot of companies don't have the old school offices, they used to. Their footprints are shrinking, and they're hiring teams from across all four corners of the globe. And so how do you make sure that people are compensated fairly when you're dealing with, very different markets, from all over the world? And I think the last point I want to make is around generational groups. Obviously, we still have a lot of the older folks, that are still working. And I think that the combination of because they've always worked and they need to, or it's because they can't afford not to. So you've got the older, past 1940s, 45, there's still some of those guys left. Baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and so you have very different needs and wants and the requirements for those groups. When it comes to employee experience, work, organizations, and so that's not an easy thing to do, and that goes right into compensations. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about here, and we're going to unpack this with our guest, who is Deanna Brousseau. Deanna is based in my second favorite Canadian city, which is Edmonton, Alberta. We're going to get into why she's wearing a Yankees hat in a minute, but Deanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me, before we, dive into our questions and our topic, maybe you want to tell the audience what you do, your background, a bit about your organization, and most importantly, why you are wearing a Yankees hat.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Yes, I'm throwing everybody off today in the office. So hello, everybody. My name is Deanna Brousseau. I am the director of people at AltaML. I've been, my background stems all over the place. I went to school for HR and labor relations. My first job out of school was recruiting. And I think that was all kind of by accident. I went to school wanting to be an HR manager, but fell into recruiting, fell in love with recruiting, led recruitment teams in oil and gas, in nonprofit. And now I'm over here in tech. And I've been with AltaML for almost 3 years now. And I started out just on the talent side and just doing recruiting for technical roles and scaling our organization. But then I've grown into all sides of people. And so now I'm directing the people team and talent team, coming up with strategies to attract and retain the best talent. AltaML, in a nutshell, we build machine learning solutions for large enterprise organizations. We're industry agnostic, if you will. So we partner with, anybody and everybody that align with our values for elevating human potential. And then we also build ventures. So we build companies and scale product ideas. So it's a very cool startup based out of Alberta, headquarters in Edmonton. So yeah, it's a great place. So happy to be here. And yes, I'm wearing a Yankees hat, and it's all good. It's a vibe.
So, secondary question that I always ask, people in Alberta is what the temperature?
What's the temperature today? Right now,
Yeah.
it's 2 degrees Celsius, which is
Oh, that's like summer weather.
yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
Essentially, I just need shorts, and we're good. 2 degrees is 20
Okay.
essentially.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when it's been like minus, 40 for a month, and then all of a sudden it, jacks up to +2, you're like wearing flip flops and shorts and a t-shirt, right? Basically.
Yes. Yeah. My
Yeah.
closet is confused, so that's okay.
Confused. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't know what season we're
That's
in.
really funny.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into some exciting stuff here. So compensation, that's a real tough area, and I'm really happy that you're sort of taking this on. So first question for you. So we talked a bit about needing a compensation philosophy, and so sometimes
Yeah.
people get really confused by that. But what is a comp philosophy for you? And then I guess maybe the second part of the question is, how do you start to build one?
Yeah, that's a great question. Compensation philosophy, that's a huge term. And I think it's all about your organization's why, right? So it's the why out of like the why, how, what, who type of model. And so a philosophy to me is really built on goals and guiding principles. So if you understand what your organizational goals are in terms of compensation and where you stand, and then what are your guiding principles to help you make those decisions about your compensation strategy. And those are the two pieces of the puzzle that I believe build a philosophy. So, for example, your goals for a compensation philosophy could be to bring more clarity on like how compensation decisions are made within your organization, right? It could also
Mhm.
be to engage your talent and make sure that our high performers are staying and that we're paying competitively. So that could be another goal. The guiding principles I find have to align. They have to really be something you always go back to. So you have to ensure that those principles everybody knows. For ours, it's more about like fair, sustainable, accessible, and that always brings us back to the why, the philosophy. Um, yeah,
Okay, so that's a good answer. Thank you for that. I just want to switch.
yeah. Let's
I
switch.
probably could have asked this question first, but compensation. When you ask somebody, what it means, they always talk about base salary. As both of us know, being in this industry for a while, it's much more than that. And so I have a term, it's been tossed around, but total compensation mix. So what is that total comp, and then what kind of data should we be looking at?
Yeah. Total comp is huge, and I agree with you, Jeff. I think a lot of people focus in on the base salary and take that as that's it. But there's so much more. So total comp includes things like yes, compensation, base pay, but there's also extras that go into that, right? So if a company
Yeah.
has GRSP matching, if they have bonus or variable pay, if there's ESOP, that adds to the compensation portion of total comp. But then there's also work life balance, right? So
Yeah.
do they offer uncapped vacation? What about like a hybrid or remote model, right? That's a work life balance perk that adds into the total comp. Wellness benefits. So looking at your like health and dental, looking at anything else that your company provides. Our company provides like a parking and transit benefit if you're a hybrid organization. And then of course a huge one that people often don't talk about or pay attention to until they need it, of course, is learning and development. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of organizations, they have like an L&D allowance, if you will, or a fund that they distribute to employees. There's mentorship programs internally at most organizations. And then, of course, like career development. I think at a lot of startups, career development is very fast. You can grow really quickly, and you have to take that into consideration with your total rewards.
I think that's awesome,
Yeah.
and I totally agree with you on all of that, because I think people lose sight of the fact that it's not just that dollar that shows up in your bank account, because there are so many other things that actually factor into that. And I think one thing that you said was around transportation, and so I mean you're in Edmonton, which is a bit of a smaller city, but I'm in Toronto, and I just live north of the city, and I used to work downtown every day, and it would take me minimum 3 hours every single day of I commute. So not only am I spending 15 hours minimum of commuting, which
Yeah.
like eats away at your energy levels and your mental health, and but just the pure cost of transportation, whether I drive, I take the subway or the GO train, just a matter. People are saving thousands of dollars every year, and especially when we're dealing with a financial crisis right now, I think that people forget that is a huge savings. That's the money in your pocket that you could use for other things. So I think and those types of things don't cost an organization much, but it's a huge
Exactly.
benefit to people, right? So, and
Huge,
I think it's really
huge.
important that people understand it. It's a total mix, not just that base salary, because quite frankly, you can give everyone a 10%, a bump up in pay, but in Canada, tax are going to eat that, money away pretty quickly, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
And I feel like, yeah, you have to bring that up throughout the employee life cycle and remind them about their total comp. Like it's more than just
yeah,
at the time of offer when a candidate signs. It's like they'll forget about all these extra perks. They really will, because they'll just get into the daily grind. And it's like, did you know that we have a health spending account? Oh no, I didn't know that. Like you really have to,
yeah.
keep educating folks while they're at your company.
100%. And I think we're going to get into that,
Okay.
after. But I just wanted to ask you, obviously building a comp structure is not easy.
No.
So how do you typically go about building it? And then what are the key components?
Yeah. So when I first started building our, like, I guess I would say one of our first drafts of a compensation philosophy, I had to start with our assumptions, like assumptions meaning like what we think is true today and how we're doing things today. And then what needs to change. So essentially making a whole ton of notes and lists on assumptions. Um, then linking those assumptions to what you have in play today and is this going to work? So, for instance, looking at your job leveling framework, starting there and going, okay, do these job levels need a review? Do they make sense right now? Do we have to make adjustments, right? And then pulling in, data points on like, okay, well, if we need to change our levels, where are we currently to market? And starting there. Um, and then, of course, really aligning where you want to go with your compensation philosophy to the values of your organization. This is a tricky one to explain, but I think it'll make sense to most of you. Is if your values as an organization is to really move quickly, to be fair and transparent, to be competitive, then you need to ensure that your compensation philosophy is set up in a similar way, or else there's a disconnect, right? You can't be telling
Yeah.
your internal team that you are a transparent and open company, as a value, but then not be on the compensation side. And so there's work to be done there. But really start with all your assumptions, list them down on a slide deck or whatever, however you choose to do it. And then do some research, right? Start to grab some data in the market, on, where you stand. You can also research other organizations' comp philosophies. There's a ton of information out there through OpenOrg and other sources where you can kind of take a look. Start there and then pull in other key stakeholders in when the time is right, and there's a science to that.
One of the biggest challenges is finding data. I mean, obviously, as you know,
Yes.
I mean, you're in tech, right? And so, when you're trying to compare apples and apples, and then, I think people ask me a lot about where can I find high quality compensation data, where I
Mm.
can start from. Where do you get yours from? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, we use a number of sources, and we struggle too with the what's true. One of the key surveys that we use is through TAP, which is a talent and people network.
Yep.
And so then they give us the surveys based on tech companies participating. So we are comparing relatively apples to apples with that survey
Yeah.
because we're in the same industry. And then again, it's lovely because I can see actual roles that we hire for, like machine learning developers and software engineers, and real data there. There's other sources that are free that you don't have to pay for, but I'd be very careful with taking that as sole truth. You have to compare with multiple sources. So I think levels.fyi is getting a lot of attention. I know a lot of job seekers use levels.fyi for negotiation. I find it's okay. But then we also use a tool called Pave, and Pave integrates with our HRIS system and actually pulls real data of the salaries there. And then they also do that with other companies that they've partnered with. And then you can easily see sort of where you are in the market based on that data. So I really am enjoying Pave, and I am really enjoying the TAP network and their annual surveys that they give out.
Yeah, so TAP is awesome. So I know them really well, and the nice thing about TAP is that they're focused on Canada, right?
Yes.
So obviously they're in Vancouver, but getting that Canadian data that is really specific to TAP is really to tech is hard, and so I really like them. It's also pretty cost effective. I mean, when you're spending that kind of money to join TAP, and it's backed by Mercer, credibility, obviously. I think the other thing, that I heard from you was that you use multiple sources, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really important. I tell people that often too, is that if you just sort of hanging your hat on one source, your margin of error is going to be quite high. I think the trick is to use multiple sources and to use, your best judgment. And I think that's really what it comes down to. So,
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about communication. I think that's a huge one. And, so how do you suggest companies approach communicating their compensation strategies? So, I mean, obviously getting buy-in is crucial, but obviously, some companies are not really ready to share everything. They can't really, defend it, or they're not overly confident, with it. Money is a really weird subject. So, how far should you go in communicating in the name of being transparent?
Yeah, I think, it starts at the top. It starts with alignment at the top. So with my positioning around building a compensation philosophy and then essentially presenting it to the executive team and saying, hey, what are your thoughts? And letting the executive debate. Like, I want debate. I want them to ask uncomfortable questions. I want them to say, oh my gosh, are we actually doing that? Or we should do this. Yes. Get the debate happening at the top, and then eventually you'll have alignment. Even if it's a disagree and commit type situation, that's what you want to end up with. And then once the top is aligned, then you come up with a communication plan of, okay, so what's important? What do people need to know? You can look internally on what issues you're facing. So if you're having any type of retention issues, why? Why are people leaving? If the number one reason is, compensation, or we're not paying as well, et cetera, then maybe we need to communicate what we're doing about that. And again, being transparent, saying, yes, maybe we're not as strong in this area, but we're working on it and we're doing better in this area. We have to be careful to don't gaslight or don't feed a false narrative of, well, we pay market. Well, when we really know, according to the data, we lag in the market. And if we're okay lagging in the market, why is that? And what else do we offer so that, there's more than just, okay, we lag in the market on base, we offer more in total comp, right? So then once you get to the communication piece, being transparent of, okay, you're an employee here, and this is all like the total comp. This is why. This is the why you're here in total comp. This is why you have this base salary. Showing them the levels, showing them the framework on how to grow within a level, showing them the competencies that are needed. Doing something like a comp ratio, where once you hire somebody, you put them within a band, you use a comp ratio, and you have that detailed so that if they have questions as to, well, why am I an IC3 and not an IC4? And why am I at the minimum point, not the midpoint? Then you can use a comp ratio to say, this is why, and have more of an objective view than a subjective. I think the first time you go public on your compensation philosophy for your internal team, keep it as high level as possible to start. Just really what's important, what's changed, and what are you going to do to keep people updated? All the micro details and all of that, I think that's for the top to worry about. But it's just really about being transparent and high level.
Yeah, I think that, really a useful lesson, because I think with compensation, people always have questions. They're always challenged. They will say, well, I, don't actually agree with that, and so on. But if you come from a place of strong data,
Yeah,
confidence, and, doing the right thing based on your values, that, people have a choice to make. Like I've never seen any employee engagement survey where somebody asks, so do you want to make more money? And they say no. That's not happening. They're going to say yes,
for
right?
sure.
So of course they want more, but I think if they are perceiving the comp to be fair and transparent and aligned with your organization values, and they don't want to be there, then I think you're doing the right thing. I
Yeah.
don't think everybody can be totally happy, but I think you capture that pretty well. Just last question for you. I just have an add-on question. What trend do you see in compensation down the road, like if any? I mean, do you see
Dang.
anything different, or do you see this sort of trend to hyper personalization, continuing, or
The
something else?
yeah, I think that the trend really is more than just HR, and people are becoming more and more curious about compensation and compensation philosophies and the why. And so, for instance, pay transparency laws, things like that. Uh, it's becoming more of an open book. It's becoming, you can go to a job ad for a large corporation and see the range of a role and go, "Oh my gosh, really?" And the reactions from that and the questions from that. And so the biggest trend is, comp teams on people teams or HR teams are going to have to level up in terms of making sure that they have the right data, they have the answer as to why, they have the right training in place internally for people leaders on how to navigate compensation discussions, especially
Mm,
when all of it right now seems to be kind of an open book. The market doesn't want to be asked when candidates are applying for a job, they don't want to be asked what's your comp expectations if the employer's not disclosing it, right? Like it's becoming more of that push pull situation,
yeah.
which I know some people love it, some people don't. I have opinions, but you know, I see it's just going to become way more. People want more transparency, and then employers are going to have to be as transparent as they can if they can do that. But yeah, it's everybody's talking about it, right? I think back in the day that was off topic. You would never talk about how much you made, right? Especially like women, we just won't. And nowadays it's like, no, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how much we make, how much we take home. um and you'll find there's a lot of inequities, and then that's the challenging part is then corporate, companies now have to go do some cleaning, right? Or explaining.
100%. If there's one thing that the viewers can actually learn, from everything that we've talked about today, so what is that one?
I think what you can learn is you can have a lot of influence on your organization's compensation philosophy, just by having the right data, just by having multiple data sources, and understanding the why of why your viewpoint or your suggestion to a part of the compensation philosophy will help the company, either grow or retain employees or XYZ, right? So you can have a lot of pull as long as you have the right data and the right confidence.
I think that's perfect. That's a great segue, like into the last part. Which is thank you for being here, Deanna. I think this was a good one. I mean, compensation, we can probably go on for like hours
Oh
and
my
hours,
gosh, I
but of
know.
course, we're going to keep it short.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone actually enjoyed this, episode. We will include all of, the popular links to tap, to pay, Deanna on LinkedIn. You are going to get a barrage of people contacting you, which is great. And there you go. And, obviously, if you're watching this episode and you haven't hit that, subscribe button on YouTube,
Hit
please
it.
do so. So then you can get notified of, new, videos being dropped. Share some comments. I want to hear from you. And obviously, any questions for, Deanna. If I can't answer them, I'll just funnel them to her. And
Amazing.
so we do drop episodes every week on Thursday mornings, and we talk to HR talent leaders from across the country, and also in the U.S. as well. So compensation is a really big topic right now, and I think the key learning today is transparency, multiple data sources, being confident, and obviously really understanding the needs and wants of your employees. So, Deanna, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me.
I'll talk to you soon.
It was a blast.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Audio Jungle.